Well, not the night that the Ohio State Buckeyes had in mind. Goodness gracious, that was a whale of a football game. And Indiana was the deserving winner tonight. Final score of the Big Ten championship game, Indiana 13, Ohio State 10. Brendan Gulick, Anthony Moeglin with you on Buckeye Roundtable. And, I think you just have to acknowledge, at least off the top, that the better team tonight won the game. But gosh, I feel like Ohio State probably is going to go back and watch that film and have some what in the world were we doing moments. And we're going to get into that, whether it was personnel decisions or some play calling or just some bad execution. I think both teams probably felt like there were a couple penalties that were pretty egregious that weren't called. We can get into that too. But, Anthony, on a day where it was largely billed about two really good defenses and two really good quarterbacks, I thought the defenses had some fast and physical moments early on. And Fernando Mendoza took the first shot quite literally on the first play. And boy, that kid got back up after taking as hard a shot as you can take, I guess, without getting knocked out of the game. And he figured it out, man. He stepped up and he got it done. It's a really, really impressive game for him.
He's a cool customer, man. He's just in terms of being a football nerd, which I am, he's a fun football player to watch. And, Brendan, this game, I wrote about it over on Buckeyes Roundtable, had the personality of like an old school heavyweight boxing match where it just went punch for punch for punch. Indiana gave Ohio State a little bit in the first quarter, and then Ohio State responds back as a touchdown drive. And it was physical as heck. Like, these guys were tackling hard. They were hitting the trenches were violent. It was vicious. And Indiana ultimately outlasted Ohio State. And Brendan, what I think back to, like, when I think at the macro level of this is now Indiana's fourth one-score victory. They had a one-score game over Iowa. They had a one-score win over Penn State, which we all saw, and they had a one-score win now over us. So their third one-score victory, and they've been in this. Fernando Mendoza's been down in the fourth quarter. This team has had to make clutch plays, and they've done it in the past. The flip side, Ohio State hasn't. Ohio State, this has kind of been their question mark. They haven't really been tested, and that's not their fault. It's their fault for being so good. But it got to a point tonight where it was time to kind of put it on the table, and Indiana was able to do it because they've been there and they've done it before. And Ohio State simply wasn't. And like, this was a really good football game. It was a Big Ten, old school Big Ten type of football game. And you're right. Tonight, the better team won. But I don't think this is like reason for concern for Ohio State. I think there was a lot in there that you're going to get better from. But it was one of those nights where, the better football team did win tonight, and it was a very fun football game to watch.
I heard and read and thought a lot about Ohio State hasn't trailed in the second half all year. How are they going to handle being down in the fourth quarter? I don't know that I'm putting this so much on the players. I mean, the players play the game, and I get that. I'm having a hard time understanding why Ohio State was running so much 13 personnel. They've had trouble getting in the end zone, in the low red in particular, a lot throughout the course of the year. And I feel like when they bring on three tight ends, it just becomes this like condensed, like borderline rugby scrum. And by virtue of that formation, you don't have Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith on the field. One of the two of them, usually Carnell, is out. And I just feel like your two best players on offense are those two guys. Even if there were a couple of instances where I liked the play design, the pass broken up in the end zone. I can't remember his last name, 21, who made the incredible deflection. Like, they were clearly prepared for that play. It was really, really good. I thought Pons, even though Jeremiah Smith had a pretty good night on the stat sheet, I thought Pons played a pretty good game at corner. Fisher played a really good game at linebacker. Their defensive line was reasonably good. And unfortunately, especially against Tegra Shabola, which is why he basically didn't play much when Gabe Van Sickle got in there. I thought they moved the ball better. But I guess just to make my point, like, I don't think there should be a whole lot of finger pointing. It wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But the offensive game plan, there were a few moments where I just didn't love what I saw there. And I don't necessarily want to put that all on the guys on the field.
No, you're right though. they lived in it coming out of halftime. And honestly, Brendan, when it started, they come out of half and they're in their heavy personnel packages, that 13 personnel, and they're actually moving it a little bit. They were doing that naked bootleg work where they were getting on the edges, finding the tight ends, and it was awesome. They're shutting the lights out on me, which is great. But you get into those personnel packages and you find some success. That's good. That's a good changeup. And the problem was it became their fastball, and they just stayed in it and stayed in it and stayed in it. And I'm of the belief, I've called plays before, not at a Division I level, at a high school level, but it's the keep it simple, stupid, like, mantra. Let's put our two best players on the field as much as we possibly can. And anytime Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith are on the field at the same time, it's not only your two best players, but it is a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. You saw it a couple times. I think back to there's one really nice check down that Julian got to, because no joke, Jeremiah was triple covered and so was Carnell. They were both triple covered. They had 3 guys on them. Count that up. That's 6 of the 11 guys were occupying 2 Ohio State players. Julian checked it down to CJ Donaldson, and he got like 12 yards on the play. And it's like stuff like that happens. You pull one of those guys off the field for 3 tight ends, you take all of that fear out of the defense. And not only that, Brendan, in this game, like I talked about, the personality was very physical. 3 tight ends. You match tight ends with linebackers and defensive linemen, man. You put these big hog mollies on the field, and you bring that game, like you said, from a 53-yard wide field down to 25 yards, and then you're playing in a box. And it's just, you're right. It's lots of questions will be fairly asked about how Ohio State decided to try and attack this Indiana Hoosiers defense.
And I don't want to say that I'm like second guessing every coaching decision either, because I actually loved Ryan Day choosing to go for it on 4th and 1 down inside.
Loved it, Brendan. Loved it.
It was absolutely the right call. I didn't love the 3rd down call, but I love the decision to go for it on 4th down. I think there's something to be said, though, for Julian's not as big as Will Howard was. You just said keep it simple, stupid, right? There's something to having a really big, powerful quarterback that can run a sneak. It's going to be super effective. I know it has worked a lot this year. Indiana's defensive line is really good. And I thought they had, when you showed the overhead view of that play, there wasn't a ton there. And all it took was Julian slipping just a little bit, and it cost him. It is what it is. I think a lot of people will look back at a game where you lose by 3 and think, gosh, how many times could you have scored? And Jaden Fielding missing a short field goal, that sucks. I like reckon back to how many times just in the last several years, Ohio State's been burned by kicking mistakes. Georgia and Michigan and tonight all come to mind immediately. I not great.
Brendan, this one hits home for you and I, probably not any of the listeners here, but you and I watched 2 kicks today inside the 5-yard line that were missed. John Carroll missed an 18-yard. Do the math on an 18-yard field goal. The ball was at the 1-yard line and they missed it. Yeah. Ohio State just missed one from the 9-yard line. Like, honestly, and I'll say this. I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth. The team was every player who spoke, and those will all be available here on YouTube here in about an hour. Everyone that spoke said this is a team game, and they all acknowledged that Julian made a mistake, but also acknowledged that they all needed to be better. All of that is very true. However, Brandon Ennis said something like, he along the lines of, it's a really hard position. I encourage you all to go out and kick he said a 40-yard field goal. Go kick a 28-yard field goal and see if you can make it. I don't want to sit here and say I'll make 10 out of 10 or 11 out of 11, but that make percentage is very high because that's a short kick. And it's unfortunate for the kid. It's just really just sucks for him because he just yanked it. He just snapped it. And that's just really what it was. And really tough for him to do that. And it's hard for kickers. A receiver makes a mistake and runs the wrong route. So maybe nobody even knows. A lineman makes a mistake and misses a block. Maybe nobody even sees it. Kicker makes a mistake. Millions and millions of people see it, and it's just the nature of the beast, and it's a tough reality. So just a tough one for him, and it just in a high leverage situation is just a tough draw there.
The overwhelming thought leaving the game, other than the frustration of you lost and your season's not over, so you can wipe it more quickly. I don't know that we'll ever really know the answer because publicly they're never going to say anything other than the right buttoned up answer. I'd be so surprised if they ever went off beat on this. This was a really tough week, man.
Yeah.
Brian Hartline gets the USF job. Ryan Day is scrambling like crazy to try to convince Chris Henry Jr. to stay in Columbus. And, at the same time, they're trying to prepare for a number 1 versus number 2 national, ranking caliber game to win a Big Ten title for the first time in 5 years. There's a lot on your plate as you're trying to figure out the right game plans. And Brian is, in Florida a little bit, in Columbus, trying to do his job. Like, I'm not saying there was malintent anywhere. I'm just saying there were a lot of distractions. I don't know if the Buckeyes lose this game because they missed something or not. I don't know. And the reality is they get, a month here to figure it all out. But it's just one more reason why the college football calendar sucks right now.
That's it right there. It's such a good point. Kevin and I talked about this earlier in the week. I wrote about it too. All of this can be changed and fixed by just moving stuff in the calendar. Like, there's no reason why everything you just said happened in a week where Ohio State was preparing for a 1 versus 2 matchup. Like, I didn't even cross my mind until you started talking about it. Like, yes, that absolutely plays a factor. And not to mind the play caller who's been calling plays all season long, like you said, was splitting time between here and Tampa. Like, I mean, that's it's all because of the schedule's crazy. But it's a really
I don't know that we know the answer to this, but is it Brian Hartline's decision to go run 13 personnel a bunch? I have a hard time believing that. Maybe I'm wrong.
But even look at what they did. Look what they did coming out. Like, their game plan was not effective coming out. And what was more a shocker to me was the lack of adjustments. I thought Indiana started to make some adjustments, and where it really caught my attention was like the 3rd or 4th drive where Julian hit Carnell Tate on a first down that like zipped over the DB's head. I don't know if you remember that, but like he like broke on it. Ohio State was majoring in RPOs, and here's why. Well, let's nerd out on football for just a minute. RPOs, run pass option, where you can hand it or throw the football. They were majoring in it to start every drive. If you go back and watch it, that's really how they started every drive. And if it was first down or second down, they were doing a lot of that RPO stuff. The reason why was because they wanted to isolate Jeremiah and Carnell, right? If you bring guys into the box to defend the run, that means there's less guys to defend number 4 and number 17. Awesome. Good idea. It worked in the first couple drives. And then you saw Indiana make some adjustments to it, right? Where they had a PBU. They moved their guys up in coverage so they can add to the run game and defend. And then they almost throw an interception. And you're like, wait a second. Indiana's adjusting. Ohio State's not adjusting. It hasn't burnt them quite yet. But it just felt like it took too long for Ohio State to make changes that they needed to. Whereas on the Indiana side, especially on their defensive side, they were changing stuff up constantly. And the evidence was Julian Sayin was very uncomfortable tonight, uncharacteristically uncomfortable tonight because he wasn't just sure of what he was seeing all night long.
I mean, I totally agree. And, I thought Brian Haynes did an excellent job.
Yes.
Got a lot of love on Twitter from some national people. Obviously, the IU fans loved it. He was a GA at Ohio State at one point in his career and geared up for a hell of a performance tonight. And he had Julian uncomfortable. But I guess I just don't know how much of that lack of comfort for Sayin I put solely on defensive scheme.
Yep.
5 sacks and 9 TFLs tonight. He was under pressure a lot. And maybe that's why they went to 13 personnel, because they wanted to try to hide the fact that their right guard stinks.
Yeah.
There's got to be other reasons for it.
Brennan, is physicality for me. I mean, every play, anybody carrying the football for Ohio State, whether it was Jeremiah, whether it was Bo Jackson, whoever it was, they were getting punished. They were getting hit hard. And inside the trenches was a war. It was a war. And it's credit to Indiana. They have a group of dudes on the defensive side. And whether you like him or not, he's a damn good football coach. And Kirk Cignetti has the personality.
Yeah.
Dude, I love him. And they have his personality, and they play with it, dude. Like, they are nasty. They're physical. They're all the things. They don't care. They'll talk. They'll run their mouth, whatever, and they'll make plays. And that part, that part is the tip of the cap to Indiana, because they are tough. That defense is tough as nails, man.
Dude, they're tough. And again, like, Fernando Mendoza got hit to Mars on the first play of the game. And for him to come back in and just hang in there and, still on the run, make a few plays. I was impressed. I know it sounds silly. I was impressed the number of times on the run that he threw the ball out of bounds intentionally. Like, hey, there's nothing here. Fight another down. Just we'll try again next time. There's a lot of maturity there. Now, he's kind of a strange kid. His post-game interview is strange. Weird. He's an odd bird, but good for. I mean, he obviously processes things really, really well.
So fast, dude.
Incredible belief in himself. And if you haven't watched a lot of football this year, Charlie Becker might be one of the best receivers in college football. I don't know. I mean, he made the kid look great. How about IU winning this game with arguably one of their three best players not on the field tonight in Cooper? I mean, it's crazy.
It was wild. And what's fun about Mendoza, I think you said it. This is an Hoosiers Roundtable. There is Hoosiers Roundtable. Go find it and go subscribe. But his processing is so fast. Like, I think back to it was after Ohio State punt, or maybe it was after the fourth down, actually, because Indiana was inside their 5-yard line, and they rolled Fernando out, and Caden Curry again. Caden Curry and Fernando are going to have each other's phone number by the end of tonight, because Curry was in his face from the first play to the very last
play. And he was beating his former teammate Zen Mihalski to a pulp.
Dude. But on that specific play, it was supposed to be just a pass to the flat. You can see it. It's a rollout to the right, and Ohio State covers it up nicely. They drop into a cover 2 look where the corner buzzes the flat, and it would have been either a kill shot or a pick 6. And Fernando, like, before my eyes could even see it up in the press box with a perfect view on it, like, he just, like, almost like no looks, whips this thing to a spot route right over top of the coverage, and you're like, holy cow! Like, that was NFL level quickness and processing, and that's why he's going to be a top 3 draft pick. He's going to be the first overall pick. He's that good, and you could see it tonight. I mean, I'd have to look back, and I'm going to look back later, but I don't know the last quarterback to throw over 200 yards against this Ohio State defense, but 15 of 23, 222, and a touchdown. He was special tonight, and really it was the difference in the game. It was tailed 2 quarterbacks, Brendan, and their quarterback showed up in that second half.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I guess I come back to on the on the passing yardage. I mean, he obviously hit a couple of deep shots. Becker caught the 51-yard completion, which was certainly the biggest one. I really wasn't that upset by the way Indiana moved the football throughout the night. I didn't think Ohio State played a bad game defensively. I mean, if you'd have told me before the game the Buckeyes were going to give up 1 touchdown, I would have said, okay, like, yeah, sounds about right with that group. They kind of gifted him a field goal by turning it over fairly deep in their territory, and stiffened up and gave up another field goal. Otherwise, I mean, Ohio State did not lose this game by much. And I really, really, really don't want to get into the, hey, where were these bad calls kind of thing. But there were a couple of things that I just
totally,
man, how in the world was the judgment to whistle the sack dead when Julian was by no means in the grasp of that defensive end, and it cost them 12 yards, and it killed the drive. That was over. The DPI on Styles in the first half on the deep shot down the seam, I mean, I know Joel Klatt said on TV that he thought it was a good call. I disagree. I don't think there's enough there for pass interference. And I mean, what in the world does Ohio State have to do, especially Kenyatta Jackson? What do they got to do to earn a holding call? I mean, there were at least 3 that were awful no calls. And I know Indiana had a couple that they felt the same way. Championship game, you're letting them play, whatever. But like those non-penalty calls that should have been penalties, like, completely changed the context of the game. I think you're doing the game a disservice when you don't throw those flags.
Yeah, it's a tough one. All of those ticky-tacky is the wrong word, but it's like those play. You just can't try to make those judgment style plays where, like, hey, we're not going to call it tight, well, if you don't call it tight, then you're not calling it at all. And it just gets into a weird gray area where you're like, oh, we didn't call holding on that drive, so we're going to call it on the next drive. Well, how does that change the context of the drive and the game and the quarter and whatever? Yeah, I get those are really tough because Ohio State's got a boatload to gripe about. Indiana has a boatload to gripe about as well because they weren't calling anything. And then when they were calling, it just felt weird to me. It felt odd. I don't know.
I don't really know what else to say other than that. Ohio State lost the game fair and square, so it is what it is. This is not like, the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, whatever it was 6 years ago, where you want to pull your hair out. I mean, it's not quite like that, but I thought there were a couple of calls that were pretty costly that weren't called.
It's fascinating, Brendan. I was texting with Dylan about this, who's somebody you'll read over on the site. But, what's really cool about the Ohio State defense is, some teams move the ball on them, but it almost feels like when teams get into the red zone, they hit this like next level of play. And a lot of it is because you can't run the football against these guys. Like they're so damn good against the run that you have to throw it. And when you get into those condensed fields, like, it's almost impossible. And it felt early on, Brendan, when Julian throws that pick on the first drive and Indiana gets the ball in the red area and they hold them to 3 again. You're like, oh, here you go. It felt like Indiana needed 7 points there. They didn't get it. It's going to be Michigan on repeat. Like, that's one of the really good parts about this team, this defense specifically. I thought the defense was great tonight, to be honest. But when they get in the red area, man, they tighten down and they make a lot of big plays down there. And they're fun to watch when they get into the red zone.
I want to respond to this comment because I know a lot of people feel this way. When you look at the penalties, the discrepancy tonight, Ohio State was penalized twice for 20 yards, IU 5 times for 49 yards. The only thing I would say to that is I thought the penalties that were called on Indiana tonight were obvious. They were lined up in the neutral zone. That's a flag. It's an illegal low block. You can't hit an offensive lineman like that on Innis's throw back across the field. It's a flag. I mean, like those kinds of things, the face mask in the middle of the pile, the replay showed he clearly hit him. Like I just felt like it wasn't an uneven disparity of who had what number of flags tonight. It was clearly a decision by the officials, hey, we're going to let these guys play. And both teams probably felt like there were some penalties that should have been called. But again, I mean, I've said it, I'll say it again. Indiana was very clearly the better team by the end of the night tonight. And to me, this game just calls back memories of like the New Year's Eve debacle of missing a kick, as the clock struck midnight against Georgia. I mean, these feel like, and I know Georgia fans or SEC fans are not going to agree with this. And I guess I'll listen to the argument because Georgia's had a really good year. That felt like the 2 best teams in college football. And if they're not the 2, they are 2 of 3 or 4 with no question whatsoever. Yeah. And I really hope that Ohio State falls either to 2 or 3 and not all the way to 4 so that this rematch won't happen in a semifinal if they both get that far. Yeah. The only thing there is if Ohio State, there's a lot of people saying that they're going to fall to 3. And if they do, you're going to play Georgia potentially, theoretically, in a semifinal. And that game's either going to be in Phoenix or Atlanta. And, if Indiana has its choice, I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I'd make Ohio State go play a virtual road game. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
This game had, it's going to have shockwaves a little bit for Ohio State, but I think you're right, especially after watching today. I was able to catch just a little bit of that Georgia game. It's definitely Ohio State, Indiana, 1 and 2, and I would say head and shoulders, Georgia, and then the field, right? I think you start getting to 4 through 12. Well, 4 through 10 now because we're getting 2 at large. But according to I didn't watch any of it. Did Duke win?
Yeah.
James Madison, you are a playoff team.
I mean, I think, which is insane. I mean, it seems – I think I'm not going way too far out on a limb here. I think we're going to see first-round playoff games at Oregon. Ole Miss should host Texas A&M and probably Oklahoma. Those should be your 5 through 8, in my opinion. And then how they divvy out the rest will be interesting. I mean, Notre Dame needed Alabama to get punked today. They probably needed BYU to lose today the way they did, and having Duke beat beat Virginia, even though I think that was a serious long shot. I think Notre Dame's probably going to get in the playoff now, which frankly I think they should, because I think they're playing like one of the best teams in the country. But they're going to sweat it out on the way in. Miami, maybe, but I don't know. Bama probably sneaks in as at 10. It's going to be interesting to see tomorrow.
It will be very interesting to see tomorrow. If it were me right now, the committee got an absolute lifeline, because I think you can with very little argument put both Notre Dame and Miami in now, and you can kick. I don't know how they're going to do it. I feel bad kicking Bama out for getting thumped today, because a song for another time. But these conference championship games, which while this one was amazing, they need to go away if we're going to keep the extended playoff, because there was no upside for Ohio State today. And there was an incredible down. Indiana the same. If Fernando Mendoza broke his face on that first play and in the Big Ten championship game, and he was done for the rest of the year,
how could you even evaluate them regardless of the score?
There's a major discussion to be had around these conference championship games, and it kind of leads me to what I wanted to say. This environment was spectacular. Ohio State traveled well. Obviously, Indiana traveled well. It was so cool. It was one of those where every play was a big crowd pop, no matter what. You were getting a big Ohio State pop, you were getting a big Indiana pop. And obviously the game was fantastic, so it stayed to the final second. And you know what was cool, Brendan? Like we don't really touch on it on our show and our channel, but like this was Ohio State's like first major test since August. And it was cool to see a back and forth football game. Not a game where it was fun. It was fun. I was texting with Dylan, and I was like, well, my game story is not going to be done in the third quarter for the first time all year, because this is going to go down to the wire. And it was really cool to see Ohio State get tested. I will say this too, Brendan, like this is, whether you think I'm full of crap or not, this is almost a carbon copy of last year. 13-10 loss to the Indiana Hoosiers. Feels like a lot like a 13-10 loss to the Michigan Wolverines that happened, that jump-started one of the greatest runs in college football history that you'll ever see.
The only thing I would say there is Ohio State wasn't a 3-touchdown favorite in this game. But to your point, there's a little bit of the whole mirroring thing. And if Ohio State can use this as a wipe the slate clean, we've got a month to get this figured out. The only thing that this cost them tonight is the Rose Bowl, and which sucks because I would have loved to be back in Pasadena. But, I think more than anything else, it can help for you to find where your weaknesses are, and just to have that reminder before you go into the playoffs that you're not invincible, even if you look so far and away better than everybody you've played so far. There are a couple of other teams out in the country that are capable of beating you. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, was in the press box at the Ohio high school state championship games. They're like, Ohio State, you just give them the national title. Like, pump the brakes on that. Like, they look good enough to win it. But there are some teams that can definitely, give them legitimate games, including the one this weekend. I thought Ohio State was going to win this game. I thought they were going to cover a 4-point spread. I thought their defense would play about as well as it did in terms of what they gave up on the scoreboard. I was a little concerned. I am concerned coming out of this thing at how inefficient their offense was in a couple of critical situations. They got to be better in the red zone, man.
And Brennan, they taught Luke Montgomery. I encourage everyone to go watch it. He had really thoughtful things to say, and he goes, "Yeah, some of those warts that had been showing up throughout the year kind of got covered by us just being much better than the other team." One of those was they've struggled to score for whatever reason. There's been several times this year where they have not scored touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. I was trying to think back to more examples, but it definitely happened against OU. And there was a couple others where you didn't score touchdowns. It was Rutgers and maybe I forget the other, but there's a couple of times where you don't score touchdowns in there and they were able to cover it, but you finally did it against a good team, and it came back to bite you. You're 0 for 2 inside the 10-yard line, not even field goals. You get 0 points twice inside the 10-yard line. That's the difference in a football game, and that's the stuff where, hey, they can go back, watch the tape, and correct it. And now they know, hey, we can't just cover up everything because we're the super team, Ohio State. We have to be on our P's and Q's. We have to be sharp, and they should be able to lean on that and get some confidence out of that because, it's got to be better. You guys just got to go and get better now because of this.
I'll just wrap by saying, obviously, we're going to know a lot more tomorrow when the CFP rankings, come out and you figure out where you're going and what's going on here. In addition to the whole, could it help Ohio State to lose a game and figure out its weaknesses? I wonder if it might even help them to be a 3 seed. If you're the 3 seed and you're playing the 6 or the 11, it could be like the winner of the Ole Miss Tulane game, maybe.
Oh my God. You'll
It's
take
probably
that.
not going to be a problem. I'm not saying definitely not, but like Ole Miss with what they're going through right now. And I don't think Tulane is good enough to beat Ohio State. I just don't. So
Really? Why would you say that?
Stunner. So, gosh, I don't know exactly how the 8-9 matchup is going to look, but if Oklahoma's 8, would I rather play Oklahoma or Notre Dame, that winner, or Ole Miss Tulane? Might work out better for the Buckeyes this way. We'll find out. That's that'll be clarified for us here in less than 24 hours here. So, any final thoughts on a night that was a great, truly, I think it was a whale of a football game. It's a huge bummer to lose, but you tip your cap to Indiana because if you're going to lose a game like that, man, you want to get beat, and the Bucs got beat.
Yeah, it was final thoughts here where I think Julian will be much better for this. This was definitely a game where he can look back on and grow a lot from this game, which I'm excited about. Jeremiah Smith is really good at football, 8 for 144. 50 of them came on that last catch, but still, let's go 7 for 98. We'll take that. He's amazing. And Caden Curry, just a quick shout out to Caden Curry. He was playing with his hair on fire. Hometown game for him. And it was really cool to see him playing super well in this game. That was cool.
Yeah, especially early on.
First 2 drives, he had a major play in 3 straight series. You're like, okay, he's hustling tonight.
I can't help but feel like Ohio State's defense, for as well as they played and as fast and physical as they were in that first quarter, there have been a lot of moments this year where if the offense has sputtered just a smidge, the defense never did. And so it injected this life into them. I felt like maybe they lost their edge just a little bit in that second half. And they only gave up 7 points in the second half. It's not like it fell apart. But some of what I felt from them in that first half, I didn't feel it quite so much in the second half. Sonny Styles and Arbel Reese played a great game. I thought Ohio State was a smidge vulnerable in the secondary tonight. But it wasn't necessarily one guy. Matthews got picked out a little bit. Styles got picked out a little bit. But Caleb Downs played really well. Caden McDonald was a serious problem on the defensive line. He played great. Kenyatta Jackson was really good when he was on his feet. Most of the time he was being dragged to the turf, and that's what it was. And Caden Curry kind of embarrassed Zen Mahalski. It was a good defensive performance, but it wasn't quite enough tonight.
No, it was not.
All right, 13-10 the final score in the Big Ten championship game. Bucs will hit the reset button and try to get back at it and figure out what they're going to do in, 3.5 weeks' time when they play on either New Year's Eve in the Cotton Bowl or New Year's Day in the Orange Bowl or Sugar Bowl. They will not be in the Rose Bowl now that they did not win this game. That will be a Crimson and Cream Orange Rose Bowl out in Pasadena. For Anthony Moeglin and Brendan Gulick, thanks for joining our post-game show. Lots to come on Buckeye Roundtable. Hope you'll join us, BuckeyeRoundtable.com. Join our community. We got lots of opportunities to interact with you there, and hope you'll join us there soon.